listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, celebrating 25 years of broadcasting. Broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell. We're coming to you live and around the world from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide toll-free, 800-610-7035. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And our main radio website where you can listen to the X-Zone Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. Eastern until midnight. And the rest of the 24-hour clock, listening to the best of the X-Zone at www.xzoneradiotv.com and the new X-Zone podcast site at xzonepodcast.com. My guest this hour, X-Zone Nation, is Elizabeth Blakley Toews. We're going to be talking to Elizabeth, on a myriad of subjects. She is a clairvoyant, clairsentient, clairaudient. She is from British Columbia, Canada, beautiful part of Canada. And first of all, Elizabeth, welcome to the X-Zone. And why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on your show today. I have been a writer since 1985. That's when I launched my first book. It's a book about the potato. And I had a vision about writing this book, which was quite unusual. And I knew it would be very positive and very powerful from the get-go. And so that launched me as a writer, and from then on, I decided I wanted to know things. And so in 1987, I studied Reiki, which is a hands-on healing technique, and Reiki is universal energy. So I began channeling energy very powerfully, and this began to open up my clairvoyance, clairsentience, and clairaudience. So it's been a great journey of opening up and remembering who I am and what I can tap into from other times. And I found over the last kind of 30 years that consciousness is the key that helps me to tap into interstellar communication.
Now, do you find that the veil between all of the different dimensions and all the different realities are thinning, that maybe this is going to be a time when we're going to be able to cross over much more easier and evolve as a society?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. I've been finding that since 2012 when we had the Galactic Realignment on December 22nd, and I was aware during that time when that occurred. It was at 2:40 Eastern Standard Time. And since then, it's really difficult to describe this, but I am feeling much more connected to the fifth dimension, for one thing, and there's a lighter beingness around me, and things happen that never happened before. For instance, not too long ago, I found myself floating in the ocean on top of a whale, and it was like I had transported myself very easily,
right,
just into a different dimension, and was communicating with this whale. So yes, it's definitely, there have been changes since that galactic realignment.
What do you think the significance about you being on top of a whale in the ocean was?
I have had connections with knowing that we were created from ocean parts. Our blood is similar to the composition of the ocean, of the water, the ocean, sea life, seaweeds. And so our creators, 10th dimensional beings called the Elohim, these are more direct creators, they used various elements from this earth to create the physical body. So that brought me back to like primal creation.
Kind of like getting back to basics.
Getting back to the original plan.
All right, Elizabeth, please stand by. You and I have to take a short commercial break. Exo Nation Elizabeth Blakley Toews is our special guest of this hour. And if you'd like to find out more about Elizabeth, visit her website at www.isismoonpublishing.com. That's www.isismoonpublishing.com. And we'll both be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. The X-Zone is a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And we come to you Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, and in Europe on Radio X. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back, everyone. Elizabeth Blakley Toews is our special guest this hour. Her website is www.isismoonpublishing.com. A lot of people today are reporting the sighting of angels. More and more people are saying they believe in angels. So tell me, Elizabeth, where and when did you first see your first archangel, and what was special about the place of its sighting?
I lived in Israel from 1991 to 1993, and the first year I lived in northern Israel near the Lebanese border, but the second year I lived in Jerusalem, which is the center power point of that whole Middle East portal. And the Middle East is a very, very powerful portal, one of the most powerful portals on planet Earth. And a portal, in case listeners do not know, is an opening into the universe, into the galaxy, so that galactic beings, ETs, can come and go. I happened to be sitting and watching the Western Wall in Jerusalem one day when I saw this amazing being spread out over the whole length of the wall. I think it's about a 50 to 60 foot wall that is still there from King Solomon's temple time. And the Orthodox Jews go there to pray and daven, and my landlady told me that should I have a prayer request, I should go there for 40 days and pray, and I would put write my prayer request down on a piece of paper and tuck it into the wall. So I just happened to be watching that wall one day when I saw this beautiful being, which I discovered was the Archangel Sandalphon, and she was dressed in white, a gown with gold embellishments, and had long flowing blondish white hair. There was lots of light around her, and she was just kind of leaning on her elbow and just listening at the wall. And I thought at that time, what an amazing insight and amazing sight, as I thought, there is somebody listening to us when we pray.
Now, you said the wall, or this part of the world, is a place where galactic beings can come and go. Who are these galactic beings that you were talking about?
One of the galactic beings that I encountered there, who actually decided to visit me after I had visited Jericho, was Moses, the character that we know from the Holy Bible and from the Hebrew writings. And he was amazingly powerful. The energy around him was extremely powerful, and it distorted my own energy field somewhat. It was like, we were trying to make a connection with our energy fields, and it was really, really difficult to begin with. But he was a really fiery being, and I discovered he's 10th dimensional, and he's Syrian. And he came to explain a verse in the Bible in Numbers to me, which I had been reading on the walls in Jericho, that I couldn't understand, but I felt very connected to. So he was one of the beings that just was suddenly standing at 6 Demamouth Street. That's my house in Jerusalem. And I also had an encounter with Mother Mary, who appeared to me in Haria. I lived next door to a temple, an old temple to Aphrodite. And one day I woke up at about 2 a.m. and she was standing beside my bed, and, with the blue robe and the white veil over her. And she was very bright light, an amazing being. And she was directing energy to my pelvic area, where I'd had pain from a car accident just before moving to Israel.
Why do you think that Moses made himself visible to you? And am I to understand that Moses was an extraterrestrial and wasn't a mortal human being?
He is, yes. He's an extraterrestrial. And he's a Syrian from the stars of Sirius. And he and I have a karmic connection from 3,000 years ago, when during the Exodus from Egypt. And I was a Levite dissident at that time. Moses was teaching that only certain individuals could be priests and servers in a temple. And I challenged him on that because I thought, we're all equal. We can work up to these different positions and carry them through. But he did not agree with that. So he actually destroyed me. Killed me at that time. So he didn't like what I was promoting, and I feel like I was right in what I was promoting, that it was the truth.
If Moses is an extraterrestrial, why do we learn about him being in the bulrushes, and why do we learn about him being exiled from Egypt? Why do we learn that he led the Israelites across the desert for 40 days and 40 nights looking for the land of milk and honey, if he was an extraterrestrial? So, are we being fed a bunch of BS?
I'm not sure what the original question is. Are we being fed BS? He was, I think, often at different times on the planet, we have been led by individuals who are ETs. And in this particular instance, the Hebrew nation was, I think, the most advanced spiritually at that time. And so they downloaded somebody that was going to help them out and to further their spirituality and their consciousness. So, but I do believe that Moses, he was a good guy and he was a bad guy. He was a very powerful. So sometimes, we misuse our power, right?
Okay, if Moses is an extraterrestrial and Moses wrote the book of Genesis, why then is the book of Genesis written in a form where there's a God, deities, there's a timeline for the creation of the heaven and earth, and the rest of the story through Genesis? And why is there God making a male and then a female instead of taking it from an extraterrestrial point of view?
You mean as far as his birth?
Well, as far as the writings of the Bible, because if he's an ET, then he should know the truth, unless what the Bible says is the truth. Something doesn't make sense here.
Well, the Bible has been translated many times,
sure,
and I believe that it has been translated to make the Hebrews look better than that they are. I believe that the truths have been slanted to suit them, in some of the translations, and I don't believe that creator or the God of the Hebrews in those times, Yahweh or whatever one wants to call that being, is. I believe he's an ET too. I don't believe that it is the creator who is speaking through those priestly lines.
The comment, truths have been slanted to make the Hebrews look better than they are. How does that resonate with people outside of the ET scenario?
I'm not quite sure. I do have a close friend who is Hebrew here in the area, and a rabbi, and we sometimes discuss some of these aspects, and he agreed with me that Moses was not always doing positive things and so forth. So I, we have to take things and try them on and see if they fit and see if find out the truth. And that's been one of my objectives in life since I became more conscious, is to not accept your truth or their truth. I'm looking for the truth.
But how do you know the truth that you're talking about is real?
I have been given the gift of prophecy, so I'm able to tell forth. I'm able to know things. Mm-hmm. And this is because I have been working on becoming a light worker and making that dedication many years ago in 1987. And I believe that I've worked on raising my consciousness in many other lifetimes. So there are things that I just know, Rob.
What are some of the prophecies that you have actually been able to talk about and that have come true?
Well, a prophecy a prophet is someone who tells forth, who knows things, who's connected to their knowing,
right?
Their sentience. And so when people ask me about their soul purposes or their past lives or who their spiritual guides are, or how they should, where they should live, these kinds of things, I have a knowing and I'm able to tell them. So it's like a telling forth of, giving forth of knowledge. It's through my higher consciousness or higher self.
So you're basically offering psychic services?
I'm not offering psychic services.
Well, what's the difference between a psychic and a prophet then? If you're saying that you know things and people come to you and seek your guidance.
What I try to do is to activate people. I'm an activator. That's my role in this life. And if people come to me, or for instance, attend my classes, and we do a soul purpose workshop, and they try to discover their soul colors, I will tell them that I can read their soul colors. I know that, but I want them to discover it for themselves. So there's a fine line here between telling people, giving them information that I know and that I can see about them, and for what I feel I need to help them to discover.
All right, stand by. We've got to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. X-Zone Nation, Elizabeth Blakley Toews is our special guest this hour, www.isismoonpublishing.com. And we'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X-Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center and around the world on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. Don't go away.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Elizabeth Blakley Toews is our special guest. Explanation, www.isismoonpublishing.com. Can you tell me more? Can you tell me more about the soul colors that you were talking about in the previous segment?
Mm-hmm. I lived in the Dominican Republic for a year, and during that time frame, I became very connected with the Atlantean energy. The Dominican Republic is part of old Atlantis, a continent that sank in the Atlantic Ocean. And during that time, the lady I was staying with suddenly revealed to me that she had been seeing various aspects of herself, and she asked me if I could see aspects of herself, and I said I could. And then I noticed that she had the beautiful soul colors of purple and green, and I was able to understand what these colors meant and how that translated into her soul purpose. So since then, I've been able to see people's soul colors.
I understand that you had ovarian cancer that you healed naturally, and I was wondering if you could explain that to our listeners.
Absolutely. While I was in England, I was told twice that I had cancer, and my spiritual guides wrote it in huge letters across the sky, and it frightened me, but I did nothing about it until I moved back to Canada. And in 1993, I took up residence in the UFO Trench of British Columbia, which is the North Thompson River Valley, which actually extends to a portal that is in the Clearwater Jasper area. And I was gardening, and I pushed a shovel forcefully in the ground, and the cyst on my ovaries burst, and I was in an extreme health situation. And at that time, my husband was also a homeopathic practitioner, so he administered homeopathics. But a few days later, when I had enough energy to get outside, I was sitting on my front lawn and, trying to determine what I would do, because I didn't feel I would have chemotherapy, radiation, or surgery. And as I was sitting there and just kind of looking out on my lawn, surrounded by these beautiful pyramid-shaped mountains, suddenly a being appeared in front of me. He was tall. He was about 8 to 9 feet tall. He was wearing an alb-like gown that was white with a rope belt, and he looked very Native American. And he simply said to me, he said, "My name is Munka, and I'm from Mars, and I'm going to give you a diet for your cancer. You are to have a diet with focusing on the potato, and also to eat wild greens, especially focusing on wild violet. And I was to eat spelt wheat and watermelon." And this is the diet that he gave to me, but especially focusing on the potato. This is 1995, and it was exactly 10 years after I'd written a book about the potato, so I thought that was kind of interesting that that potato connection had come up again. So I went on this diet immediately. I did not question this. I had a very powerful connection with Munka, and who is also known as Viracocha, by the way, who was an Incan priest, and I'm not sure what time frame, but I felt like I knew him. I had known him before, and so within 6 weeks or so, I felt a lot better. My energy was starting to return, and my husband insisted that I have go see a medical doctor, and I did, and we did ultrasounds and so forth, and I had tumors in my breast and in my uterus, and I was diagnosed with cancer of the ovary. So I continued with this diet, but then also adding the macrobiotic diet, which is an ancient Japanese diet, which is based on a diet of grains and legumes and eating for the seasons, and there's various cooking styles that enhance one's energy as well. So this occurred in May when I had this, the cyst broke in the ovaries, and there was a healing crisis. And by the end of September, I was right as rain. Went back for ultrasounds, and my body was clear of any cancer.
Tell me about your book, The Incredible Potato.
The Incredible Potato. I I was blown away by the nutrition of the potato. It is highly nutritious, and one can survive solely on the potato with a little bit of something green.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, it only lacks calcium. It has all of the vitamins and minerals except the B vitamin. It's just minus one B vitamin. It has all the amino acids except one. And it has an acid called alpha lipoic acid, which is an antioxidant, a really powerful antioxidant, which cleanses the blood. So my first edition of the potato book was focused on that nutrition of the potato and the history of the potato. For instance, there was a war fought between the Russians and the Prussians in the 1700s. They ended up in a potato patch, and they ate potatoes together, and it ended the war. So there's lots of stories about the history of the potato in the book, but I was just really, really impressed by the nutrition of the potato.
Let me ask you, you say that you're an expert in UFOs and ETs, and I was wondering if you have done any traveling within this galaxy and outside of this galaxy to other planets.
I have traveled to the Pleiades during my Reiki class, the first Reiki class that I took.
Mm-hmm.
I suddenly found myself in a different dimension where the buildings were huge. The temples around me had 30-foot columns, and it looked very much like the Greek temples
Mm-hmm.
that were built in this dimension. And I discovered that I had gone home to the Pleiades, where I'm from. I'm from Alcyone, which is the center of the galaxy, the star in the center of our galaxy. And I've also found myself traveling on Venus, which was also a very amazing experience of lots of blue, expansive light and blue, kind of an ocean type feeling there. And I've experienced a Venetian starfire ascension several years ago, and where I suddenly, in a meditation, became an 8-pointed star. The base was green light, and there was pink and gold light throughout it. And out of this light, a feminine power was manifesting out of source.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see that it was a goddess that was emerging from this light. And so that was also a very interesting experience.
Why do you think that you've been given the ability to experience so many things in one short lifetime?
I sometimes wonder about that too. And I decided early on in life that I was going to be an explorer.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know what I was going to explore because it seemed like everything had already been explored. And when I decided I wanted to know things, Rob, things just opened up for me. The Reiki classes came along, and I worked with that a lot, and it opened up my pineal gland, and things just began to happen. And I feel that I was just ready for it, and that I'd worked towards this in other lifetimes. My second husband was a fighter pilot, and on one of our first dates canoeing in Algonquin Park in Ontario, he asked me if I thought there was life out there, other life out there in
Mm-hmm.
the galaxy, and I said, no, I don't think so. But I knew at that time that he knew something, and he confessed later on when we did see this huge UFO in 1997 that they had been very aware of UFO activity over Canada, and they had chased them in their night flying exercises. So I was ready for it. You know, it was like the consciousness just began to grow,
Mm-hmm.
working with energy.
Now you said that your second husband was an Air Force pilot or a fighter pilot. Is your third husband or your first husband the homeopath?
The fighter pilot was also the homeopath.
Oh, I see.
Yes. Interesting combination.
With your encounters with aliens, has there ever been a time when you have been frightened by the alien that you're contacting or that's visiting you?
I'm not sure if I was frightened, but there were some of the beings that have presented themselves to me in the UFO trench of British Columbia that were a little disconcerting. For instance, I was contacted by the Niburians, and some of them had guns. They had like 3-barreled shotguns is what their weaponry looked like, and they were wearing metallic clothing. I've also seen them in Ontario, at Lake Ontario, at Point Peter, in the southern end of Prince Edward County where I live. I've also been in contact with the Zeta Reticuli, or the Greys, and they just happened to appear beside my bed in my meditation room one day, and I recognized them from Whitley Strieber's book that I read years ago, and I just simply looked at them. I didn't feel any fear from them, or I wasn't feeling fearful, but they looked so strange that it was, there was a feeling of, why were they there? And they simply said to me that, we are also God's creation. We're also God's children. And I said, great. It was sort of like I thought that they had given me that information so I could share it, because I think that they have frightened a lot of people, but they didn't particularly frighten me, but they did look rather frightening.
Why do you think that there are only certain people that report or have actual ET encounters and not the mass public?
Again, it's consciousness, Rob. It's the key to interstellar communication. We have to prove that we are responsible and that we are not afraid and that we trust what we see and what we hear and what we feel. I think part of the UFO contacts, too, were because of the fighter pilot. I think that was stimulated because he did wake up in bed explaining how this huge ship was powered, which was really interesting. And I knew that the beings that were in this galactic council on the ship were communicating with him in his sleep. So
why are some humans so willing to accept anything that the aliens claim to say instead of challenging these alleged aliens for proof of what they're really about, or proof of their existence? Why do they only come in a consciousness state? Why don't they come in this dimension? Why is there so much metaphysical attachment to the extraterrestrials instead of reality?
Why are they not appearing in the physical? Mm-hmm. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
I think they will. I think they will appear in the physical, but it's not time yet for them to do that.
What are they waiting for?
I believe they're waiting for that tipping point where the consciousness of the planet is going to be at that point where there's chronometers on the planet, which when human consciousness reaches a certain point, it's called a tipping point, and there's more light or more consciousness coming into the planet. And I think when that happens, people will be more open to meeting an ET down the street. And I know that some of them have manifested in physical bodies, because I have a friend in West Vancouver who has told me her stories about an ET that worked in an electronics shop on 4th Street in Vancouver.
How does she know this thing working in an electronic shop in Vancouver was actually an extraterrestrial?
He could touch a television set and be in communication with his people on his ship.
So something like E.T.
Exactly. And then he would dematerialize because they needed his help.
And you believe this?
I do.
Why?
I do.
Why do you believe it?
He gave her several copper plates with several were identification plates, and others were plates of various information that he wanted to share and leave with her. And when I touched these plates, something happened to me. I couldn't read them, but I felt a power that was multidimensional that was coming through them. And that, again, they were connected with a galactic council that was here to facilitate change on planet Earth. And the beings, Merton and Jason, who were in control, the captain and co-pilot of that ship I saw in 1997, told me, I asked them what they were doing over Canada because they were over our place every morning at 1:30, 2 o'clock a.m. And they said they were doing an atmospheric cleansing over Canada. And I asked, why are you doing an atmospheric cleansing over Canada? And they said that the Canadians were deemed the most open-minded people on planet Earth. And that's why we were gifted with this change. So I thought that was pretty amazing that this, had happened at that time. There was a lot of free thinkers in Canada at that time. Hopefully there still is in this day and age.
I must tell you, your stories are very unique. You've covered every spectrum of extraterrestrials. We've got extraterrestrials from Mars. You see from the Pleiades. When we come back, I'd like to ask you about that because that's a very interesting statement that somebody makes that they're originally from another star system. We'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. X Zone Nation, are you believers or are you skeptics? Send me your emails, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. Always enjoy getting your emails. And Elizabeth, Blakley, Toews, and I will be back on the other side of this break. For more information on Elizabeth, visit our website at isismoonpublishing.com. My name is Rob McConnell. I'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Elizabeth, you claim that you're from the Pleiades, and I was wondering if you could tell us what brought you to that conclusion.
Well, first of all, I went into that dimension out of body when I took my first Reiki class, and that was in 1987, and it was during one of the attunements where I suddenly found myself walking around this large pool, and there was this beautiful golden light that was emanating from this pool, and I wasn't sure if it was actually a liquid, but it was some kind of a substance. And suddenly I was walking around this pool with these temples that looked like Greek temples. And I was met with a being that I call Starman. And this being looked like a Greek god. He was absolutely beautiful, about 8-9 feet tall. And he had that, the plastered hairdo, the curl, kind of short hair with the curls that was plastered to the head that we see in sculptures. Sometimes this is how he looked, and he was walking along the columns, and he took me by my hand and he sat me by the temple, and he said, "We want you to come home." And I said, "Well, where am I?" And he said, "You're in the Pleiades, and you're on the star of Alcyone." So that was a very, very sudden out-of-body experience that I went on during my first Reiki class. So, yeah, we're all star sparks. I also have gone back to the Big Bang, where I was part of a large star, and as I was part of this large star, the star burst into 1 million smaller stars, or probably 1 billion smaller stars. And as these stars went out into the universe, they began to pool in different places in the universe and in our galaxy. And it was a really unique experience because I was still part of that big star, but I was also an individuated star spark. And the feeling that I was also connected to all these other star sparks was very strong. So that led me to know that many of us are from our star sparks and our souls from other places in the galaxy. We've done a lot of traveling. We've had life on other planets and other galaxies and so on and so forth. So my guides recently said that when I do go back to the Pleiades, that I will probably be there for about 500 Earth years. That would be a different time frame in that dimension. But I know that it's filled with golden light there. And what I didn't mention before was that in 1989, the Christ consciousness was downloaded into my beingness. And it was on a Good Friday where the avatar Jesus was suddenly standing beside me. And I see him quite often when I'm doing Reiki. And my whole body was filled with golden light. It was like a column of light that flowed through my entire body. So,
all right, Elizabeth, I hate to do this, but we've got to say so long for tonight. I want to thank you so much for joining us, and happy trails to you. My goodness. Mars, the Pleiades, Jesus, Moses, 2 8 to 9 foot tall aliens, one American Indian or Native American and another from the Pleiades. My goodness. In the short hour that we had her on the line with us, I feel as if I've gone through millions of years. I'll be back on the other side of this break as the X Zone continues right here from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away, X Zone Nation.